And there we go. The notification saying that the stream has started gone up, so hopefully it's not lying to us and we're live. But welcome back everyone to round 4 of this ALR Tier 1 season. Just looking, we've got 15 drivers in here already. That's pretty good considering, well, it should be starting now, but usually we're waiting on a couple more at this point, so it's whatever. But we're here for France, and so I think there's a lot of mixed opinions on this track, in all honesty. I think some people are alright with it, some people don't really like it. It's quite one of them tracks that mixes opinions a bit, but it's whatever. Just hello to everyone joining the stream. We should be getting underway soon. We're actually a minute past, so shouldn't be too long. Just waiting on a few drivers. I don't know if there's any people saying that they couldn't race today. It doesn't look like there was that many. I think there was hold on. So we had, what's the date? It's 13th. So there was 1, 2, 3 people said they couldn't race. Then we had one reserve say yes. So then 2 people said yes. And then, sorry, I said no. So we should be missing like 2 people. So I think there's still a couple people missing. Don't know what's going on. Oh, apparently we're just going. So we're going with 16. Right, okay. But yeah, as I was saying, this is one of them tracks. Some people love it, some people hate it. It usually produces a pretty good race. If anyone saw the Racer Champions that we did a few weeks back, that was pretty good. So definitely hopeful for this race. In all honesty, I think we could have a good race here today. But we'll have to see, because I know certain people would disagree with me there, say that it's not a good track and that it doesn't make good racing or whatever. So we'll just have to see. I know that some people will be trying different setups, you know, playing around with the wings and ride heights a bit to see if they can do better compared to the guys around them. Obviously some people will go with like a 3/8 wings to try and maximise the last sector and the fast corners on the track, and some people might go for a 2/7 or a 2/8 to try and get a bit of an advantage on the straights. Or, well, I mean, I don't think either setup you lose too much in the corners from personal experience, but obviously you're not quite as fast as those who are running the higher wing, so it's a bit of a trade-off, you know. Definitely going to be a few setups running around. I mean, you might try to do a 1-3 floor or a 2-3 floor. You know, maybe with a 1-3 floor you're going to bottom out over some of the curbs or bumpier parts of the track, which will unsettle the car or whatever. But you'll be faster on the straights, and then 2-3 floor, obviously you avoid bottoming out and stuff, but you're going to be slower on the straight. It's just all these little things, and France is one of them tracks where you get a decent range of setups floating around, so hopefully I'll notice when I think someone's running a different setup, and I'll be able to point it out to you guys during the race. That is the plan anyway. Looks like the first driver out on track is going to be one of the Renaults. Oh, and it's going to be a wet start apparently. So one of the Renaults, Ladamala's the only Renault here, so I'm assuming it's him. It is him. There we go. Game wasn't letting me go on board with him as we normally do. And we'll just get rid of all that for now. Obviously, doesn't matter what order everyone's in, no one's set a lap yet, and we'll just have a look. But someone's saying in chat who's going for pole, and then in brackets P11, because on this track P11 is well, it's actually one of the better positions to start. I know you're in the midfield, but you get the free choice of tyres, and around this track I think the strategy for most people at least would be medium hard, or if you're outside the top 10, hard medium. Whereas all the guys inside the top 10 would have to start on the softs, so they'll have to do a slower strategy of soft hard, because the softs here, that they can probably go about 9 laps at an absolute maximum, but they're not very fast. They're probably only fast for about 4 or so laps, but you have to take them longer than that if you want to make the hards work and do the soft hard strategy. So it's just not ideal. Usually starting P11's like basically the same as starting on pole. So you're going to see, well, normally you would see a bunch of people trying to get P11 on the grid, trying to set a slightly slower lap. But as it has a wet start here today, you're going to see less of that. Everyone's going to be trying to fight for position, as obviously wet start, starting on the Inter strategy doesn't matter. You can well, do whatever you want as soon as you use, or as soon as it's wet and you get to use like the Inters. You no longer have to use 2 different sets of tyres. You can do the whole race on whatever tyre you want. So that whole strategic element of this race seems like it's going to go out the window a little bit, which isn't too bad, but it will throw a couple of interesting things at the start. Yeah, that's what I was saying, Andrea. I was saying normally you'd find that people try and qualify P11, but I don't think we're going to see much of that today, as we're going to have a wet start. Apparently, anyway. You know that the screens that it shows us can be wrong, not exactly accurate, and we're just coming towards the end of Ladamala's lap here. It's not been the tidiest lap ever, but it will be a lap on the board. He is on the medium tyres, so maybe trying to save a set of softs for the race, depending on how the, as Daniel goes instantly faster, but depending on how long the rain lasts for, those softs might become useful. Just looking, so Jim with the 27.8 currently looking good for pole, well, with provisional pole. Let's see who else is on an out lap. We have, coming towards the end of the lap, I think the next driver will be Sepsky, who's invalidated. So behind him we have Stel Repass just coming into the final sector here. We'll just ride on board with him for a bit, see what he's up to through the final sector. Only 2 corners left, and is a valid lap, unlike Sepsky ahead. Sepsky diving straight into the pits. Let's see as he comes around the final corner, opens his DRS. It's going to be a fairly long run up to the line. It's always a bit confusing with the liners, because the line's beyond the grid here, and it's only good enough for 4th place here with a 28.4. Next across the line will be FRL Bread, who crosses the line and goes provisional pole with a 27.7, putting him just over a tenth ahead of Jim, and Harm going even faster with a 27.6, just under a tenth ahead of Bread. And coming up behind that was Tal Piz, who I think started the lap, and the Red Bull of TRT Bobby, who set a 28.8, only good enough for 8th place at the moment. So 9 drivers who have set laps, and Tal Piz, who started his lap. We also have Rally currently on a lap, just coming into the final sector here. Let's see how it goes for him. Very nice through turn 12. One of the trickiest corners on the track there is you have to go for the late apex. It's kind of blind as you turn in. You have to guess where the apex is, and you can't really mount the curbs. It's a bit too high and it'll unsettle the car. But he's taken the last sector there very nicely. Going to stay over to the left and minimise the run distance to the line, and he's going to cross the line. It's going to be 4th place with a 27.9. So solid stuff here for the Racing Point driver to get into that top 4. I'm just going to turn the volume up a little bit because I can't hear it. Let's do 5. Let's see how that sounds. That's quite a bit better actually. Just going to go and have a look at Tao Piz then, who has gotten past his teammate. Hopefully there was no blocking going on there. Tao Piz on a set of mediums, so either again trying to save a set of softs or hasn't noticed that it's going to rain. I mean, it's not that it matters. He'll probably do his other couple of laps on the soft tyre anyway, so it's not going to make a huge difference. But he goes P7. Very nice stuff from the McLaren driver with a 28.3 there, putting him ahead of a few of the soft runners. P7 overall, and to be fair, only about 7/10 off of the current provisional pole time, so it's definitely a very solid lap there from the McLaren driver. Moving on to the reigning world champion Rudy here. Hasn't set a lap. He's a bit out of sync in this quali session, but that might be on purpose. We'll just have to see as he comes through the first sector. He's going to come up to the split. Let's see what his time is. He's going to cross it. It's a 21.5 purple first sector. Obviously the track grip going up a bit at this point in the session as everyone else has gone and done a lap and put down some grip beneath them. Hopefully those back markers ahead don't cause much issues. We brake for the chicane. Again, very difficult to maximise this part of the track. You really have to use all of the track and cut it a bit to get the best time through that section as you can. Of course, it says a purple middle sector. It's not completely reliable in this game, as it always says they have a purple middle sector. But given that he did do a purple first sector, I'm inclined to maybe believe that he did do a pretty good middle sector too. It didn't look bad at least, and again just kissing that apex at turn 12, running out using all of the curb on exit very nicely and staying tight, ready for the double left hand here. You want to stay tight to that curb using 4th gear before shifting down to 2nd. He actually used his first before upshifting twice into 3rd on the exit of the hairpin. He's going to use all of the left side of the track to minimise that run distance. He's going to cross the line and it's provisional pole with a 27.2. So that puts him 4/10 ahead of Harm and 5/10 ahead of Bread. So he's a long way ahead at this point in the session. Let's see who else is on a lap. We have Sepsky, Dawidek and Jonah. I think Jonah being the first one to cross the line out of these guys in the Haas as he comes through the middle sector. Of course it says it's purple, don't trust it. We'll have to just wait and see what his time is when he gets to the end of the lap, but not looking too bad at the moment for the Haas driver, just hitting all of his points. You see a much better angle there at turn 12 to really see how close they have to get to that apex curb without touching it, as come now through turn 14 and into the final hairpin. It's looking fairly nice. There was a slight lock up there, but it didn't look like it affected him too much. Once again minimising that run to the line. He's going to cross it. It's going to be a 27.4, putting him P2, only 2/10 behind Jonah. Sorry, Jonah only 2/10 behind Rudy, and he's 2/10 ahead of Harm. So a very solid place to be. And Dawidek, CPI Dawidek, got promoted from Tier 2, was the Tier 2 championship leader, and has now been put up into Tier 1 as of this race because of his impressive performances. So he is new to the tier, and we'll have to see how he gets on while he's here. Not sure who he's replaced in all honesty, but he's done a 28.4 on the medium tyre. That's only just behind Tao Piz, only about less than a 10th behind Tao Piz, who we know is a very fast driver in this tier. So good stuff from the new driver here in tier 1. Gonna run on board with Polehouse now, as he looks like he gets a bit squirmy all over the curbs there, but hopefully it doesn't hurt his lap time too much in the Ferrari. Coming down to the chicane, picking out his braking point right on the curb. You want to use all of that curb as you brake for this corner without unsettling the car. It's really one of the strangest corners in the game, as Jim goes P3 there with only a very slightly faster time than Harm there. So very close between a lot of these guys towards the top end at the moment, except for maybe Rudy and Jonah, who are a fair bit clear as it stands. Oh, big slide there from Polehouse. That's going to hurt his time a lot, and he comes very wide through turn 12. Not quite getting close to that apex, playing it a bit safe by the looks of things. But I'm sure that slide didn't quite help him, maybe put him out of his rhythm a bit as we come through the final sector into the final corner now. Very tight, very nice, using that curb on exit. He's going to run up to the line now. Let's see what it is as he crosses the line. It's going to be a 1:28.1, only good enough for 8th place, literally a tenth and a half behind his teammate Scoolsy as he cuts the first chicane there in an attempt to get back to the pits faster. It's a bit weird to see, but I don't know. As Brett on the medium tyre, I'm not sure why he's doing that, but maybe it is about saving that soft set. I don't know. That is a very strange choice. Moving on to his teammate Tal Piz though, who is a little bit earlier on in the lap on the soft tyre. Did previously set his best time on the mediums, so we'll have to see where it goes from there, as he sets a purple first sector, so flying on those soft tyres at the moment. Let's see what he can do with the rest of this lap, as a lot of the top guys still in the pits. Rudy, Jonah, Jim and Harm all still in the pit lane, so that's why we're focusing on Tal Piz at the moment, even though he is all the way down in 12th place. But it's a very, very solid lap from him so far. Comes up to the second sector split. He's half a second up in his time, so as it stands that'll put him about 6th place I think. So if he can find a bit more in this final sector, which I'm sure he will with the compound difference, he will be looking very comfortable in this session at the moment. Maybe not enough time to get provisional pole, but it's definitely going to put him up there in the top 5 or so. So very close between a lot of these drivers at the moment, and maybe he's made a bit of a mistake on this lap, I don't really know. Because of these shots, he's going to have a bit of slipstream as he runs up to the line maybe. I'm not sure if he's close enough, probably not, but it is going to be P2, so he improved by over a second there, gaining half a second in the final sector. And it's a 27.3, putting him onto the front row. As it stands, we have Daniel, who's invalidated, and Dresser out on a lap. Dresser choosing the soft tyres for his first run of this session, and probably his last, because I'm not sure he can complete this lap, get back to the pits and then get back out again in time. So I think this will be his only shot in this session, so let's ride on board and watch how he does. He's going to come down to the chicane now, turn 8, 9 and 10. Turn 10 being a bit more of a kink than anything else, as you see Tal, no that's yeah, that is Tal Piz, completely cut the middle chicane. I'm assuming he's on an outlap. It doesn't say that he's on an outlap, but I'm assuming he is because he was in the pits not that long ago, so just have to keep an eye on what Tal Piz does, as he's out at a pretty strange time actually, because he will not be able to set a time and then come back in the pits, as Dresser decides to pit there. So once again Dresser not setting a time, but he will of course now have time to come back out afterwards, as will Tal Piz. So I'm not sure what went on there, but it was a bit strange, as we have Polehouse, Dawidek and Sepsky out track right now, looking like Sepsky the most ahead from this outlap. So we'll keep an eye on him for a bit, as he will be the first driver to complete their final run in this session. One of the Red Bulls coming out the pits too. Looks like it's going to be, as they come out on track, it's going to be TRT Bobby. So we'll keep an eye out for where he is on the track in a bit as well. I've got to say, it's very close here between the Alfa Romeo and the Alfa Tauri on track. You would think that Dawidek will back off a bit through this final sector to give himself a bit of space, and not have too much dirty air. Okay, now coming up to the line, obviously coming over to that right side on your outlap to make sure that the run down to turn 1 is minimised, whereas on the end of your flying lap you'll stay on the left side to minimise the run to the line. And very lucky to get away with not invalidating there is Sepsky. Did run all 4 wheels off the track, but the game's a bit inconsistent at turn 2 there, and he got away with it. Very lucky on this occasion. Now we'll have to see if he can capitalise on that. The rest of his lap, purple in the first sector, looking good so far as we run onto that back straight. Very long back straight, fairly easy to overtake if you get yourself in the right position. So this will be really the main overtaking spot as we brake for turn 8 here. Biggest, probably the heaviest braking zone on the track, so again will be a hot spot for overtakes. As very nice through there, but not quite a purple middle sector, so quite strange that it's not a purple middle sector. It usually lies to you and tells you that it is when it isn't, but this time it's telling us that it's not. So maybe that means it is. I don't really think so, but we'll carry on anyway in through the final sector of the lap. Very nicely slowed down for turn 12 there, as coming now through turn 14 and into the final corner. It's pretty smooth in all honesty. Now let's see as he runs up to the line what it's going to be. It's going to be a 1:27.8, and it's only good enough for P7 there, so not quite what he'd be hoping, I don't think, but still a chance to stay inside that top 10 for the start as we move on to Polehouse, who is just moving into the final sector here and has gained a lot of time so far, obviously setting his previous time on the mediums, so you would expect that as we come through the final couple of corners now, as that Ferrari looking much nicer than it was the last time we saw it, and fairly nice exit there to the final corner, running up to the line with his DRS open. It's going to be a 1:27.4, so matching Jonah there, but just slightly behind, about 0.03 of a second behind, putting him P4 instead of P3. Now we switch to Daniel, who's quite far through his lap. In fact, I think Bobby's a little bit further ahead, just coming through the final corner there. Looks like he might have run into a bit of traffic, unfortunately. So hopefully that hasn't affected his time too much. Not choosing to run all the way to the left as he crosses the line for the final time, and it's a 1:28.8. So he will start last out of those who have done a timed run, as Rudy invalidates his final run. So Rudy will not get another run in. He has invalidated. We move on to URL Jonah, who's in quite nice free air here and coming towards the end of the lap. Only 2 more corners to go. Let's see as he comes through. What's it looking like? Oh, a bit of a lock up there. He misses the corner and runs very wide. It doesn't invalidate him, but he's going to have lost a fair chunk of time there as he comes up to the line. Crosses the line, he backs off by the looks of it, and it's 1.1 seconds slower. Polehouse, of course, not setting another time. Jim, however, will set another time, as will Bread and Harm. It looks like Harm crossed the line there into P6 with a 1:27.6, and Bread will be the next driver to cross the line, so we'll keep an eye on the rest of his lap. Looks like a fairly big lock up there for the McLaren driver, and another one as we head into the final corner. He's going to open that rear wing and run down to the line. It's not looking particularly much like a huge improvement, only 0.4 there, so it puts him only 0.005 behind his teammate. P4 is all it gets though. Polehouse, what is this? What is this is just the AI being stupid, as Tal Piers crosses the line. 27.1 takes provisional pole away from Rudy there, right at the death. So, and Polehouse, of course, on that invalidated lap. So that is the final order for the French Grand Prix. We have Tal Piers on provisional pole, as he kind of set that time out of nowhere. Kind of lost track of where he was on the track, but does cross that line to take pole position by just over a tenth, so a tenth and 0.002 there. And Dresser as well getting a solid lap in at the end after not being able to set a lap all session, was only 0.003 behind Rudy. So top 3 separated by a tenth and 0.005. That's pretty good in all honesty, and not much separating our top 5 at all. But well done to Tao Piz for that pole lap that we didn't get to see very much of. Okay, and here it is. So Tao Piz on pole for his home Grand Prix here in France. So he's hoping to convert that one, obviously, as it is his home Grand Prix. Rudy in P2 with Dresser in P3. So close between those two before Bread in P4 is followed by 4 Dutchies of Jonah, Polehouse, Harm and Jim. Sepsky running P9 and Scoolsy running at the top 10, only 3/4 of a second off of the pole time. Salt and Rally P11 and 12 and Daniel in P13, Ladamala P14, Stel Repas P15, Dowdek P16 and TRT Bobby was P16 and last on the grid. So he'll be hoping to make up some places in the future. Well, in the race, at the start of the race. It might be a bit difficult though, as it is in fact raining as was predicted. So I don't know what to think of this actually. There's a Stel Reaper says that he has a problem with his pedals, so he's not happy with that and might just retire at the end of the first lap. So that's a shame for him, but equipment failures just kind of happen sometimes, unfortunately. There's not a whole lot you can do about it. It's taken a while. I think a lot of people have having to do a few changes to their setup to make it work. Only 4-5 people currently readied up, so the majority of the grid's here looking to make some changes. Obviously you're going to make some changes for the wet, but making quite a few changes by the looks of it, or just thinking about it very hard as we get away for the formation lap finally. Yeah, I'm not so sure about this rain at the start of the race. You know, rain in this game does tend to create a bit of a boring race as Tao Piz knocks out that luminous marker for turn 1 that a lot of people might have been hoping to use, since the track limits are kind of hard to see when it's wet at France, so that marker would have helped out a bit, but it's no longer there. So I'm sure it'll come back for the first lap of the race. I don't think taking it out on the formation lap removes it permanently. I could be wrong, as he takes out the second one as well, as Rally and Daniel have come together and been disqualified from the formation lap, and that is going to cool their tyres down a whole lot, which will be a problem for them, especially with this wet start. The colder their tyres, the worse their start's going to be, and they're going to really struggle for traction off the line. They could definitely be in a position where they're going to lose a lot of positions before they even get to turn 1, so that's quite unfortunate for both of them really, as there's a kind of a gap forming in the middle of this group, as you see, between Jonah and Polehouse there. Polehouse really backing up a few cars, trying to get that advantage of warmer tyres. So something for the front runners to look out for. Maybe Tao Piz wants to just slow down a bit and sort that out before it gets too late on into the formation lap. There's actually quite a few different gaps forming. We have Salt also creating his own gap, as well as Sepsky, so we'll have to see, as now I think the game has taken over control of Tao Piz's car as we just come through the final corner there. It always takes control of the car just before the pit lane to stop you from pitting at the end of the formation lap. It doesn't even give you the option of doing so, which is a shame, but you can see why they've done it as we go through the 2 disqualified cars of Rally and Daniel. I'm assuming everyone's on the inters, so I'm not really too bothered about checking tyres or talking about them too much. If they're not on the inters, I'd be quite concerned. I'm not even sure the game would let them not be on the inters, so it's whatever. But here we have the final car looking like it's just about formed up on the grid, and we should be getting some lights soon enough. Just wait for the there it is, the little jitter that the game does while it loads the starting grid and the lights come on for the French Grand Prix. We have 5 red lights. And away we go for the French Grand Prix. It's been a good start there for Rudy as he gets alongside Tao Piz. Tao Piz already on the inside, but a bit of a back end loss there for Rudy, and that allows Bread through. So Bread already coming from what was 4th place and up the order already. But there was a bit of a touch on turn 1, and it looks like Tao Piz is having some issues. It's not. It's just the game glitched. Why'd you do this to me, game? It's kind of hard to tell where everyone is with this glitch, but a bit of chaos going on in the midfield, as you would probably expect with a wet start. Lots of people colliding, even with ghosted cars, which is a bit of an odd one. Don't think I've seen that one before, but they have now sorted themselves out as we get onto the back straight. Now let's see, as we actually have a car around, it's still Repass, who said he might retire at the end of the first lap. I hope this isn't on purpose. It doesn't look like it is. Just having a bit of a spin at the start of the back straight there, and it's cost him a lot of time. Doesn't look like he's got any damage though, fortunately for him. Just going to check the whole grid, see if anyone looks like they've got any damage. Doesn't look like it so far. For all the contact we've seen, it must either be very minor damage to the point where it's not visible and the game doesn't show it. As we have Sepsky, what happened to him? As the full safety car comes out for that one, but it looks like Sepsky's crashed on the inside of this double right-hander. Maybe just gave it too much throttle to the right-hander, and that does what it looks like, because he is sideways in that wall on the inside there. So that's a shame for Sepsky to be out of this race so quickly here on lap 1. But it's the dangers of the wet. Maybe just didn't lift through there, was a bit brave, and it's come back to bite him. But he will go no further in this race nonetheless, as I think the Delta will disappear for all the cars. They'll be able to chase after the safety car, which is waiting just after turn 2 here. So lap 1 safety car for, I think, the first time this season. I think this is the first time we've had a lap 1 safety car. Not the first safety car we've had, but I think it's pretty sure this is the first time we've had one straight away. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You're always going to get some difficult starts when it's wet, especially when it's not very often that you get a wet race, or a wet start at least, in this game. So it's caught a few of the drivers out by the looks of it. But just check in as we come. Like, no one pitted there, so I don't think anyone had any damage, as I was saying. But as we come through this second lap, we have Tao Piz still in the lead, followed by Rudy, who looked like he had a good start, but just got a bit of a squirm as they came into the second phase of the start and lost all that time again and got under pressure from a couple of the cars behind. Polehouse retaining P3, followed by Bread. Actually, in fact, Polehouse has moved up to P3. It was Dresser who started P3. Dresser moved down to P6. Polehouse moving up to P3. Bread holding position in 4th. Harm 5th place. Pretty sure that's where he started. No, Harm's up 2 positions, so he started in 7th place, he's up to 5th place. It was Jonah who started 5th and has lost a couple of positions down to 7th. Obviously, we touched on Dresser moving down to 3rd from, moving down to 6th from 3rd, as Polehouse has done a swap. He's gone from starting 6th to now being 3rd. Scoolsy making up a couple of positions at the expense of Jim. So, Jim not having a great start, but he's only lost 1 position, so it's not too bad. Sol also making up a position. Dawidek with a huge start, making up 5 positions straight away. That's pretty nice for a first lap, so 16th to 11th. He won't be mad at that at all, I don't think. Daniel there in 12th, followed by Ladamala 13th, both making up 1 position for the start over Rally, who's lost 2 positions. And TRT Bobby up 2 positions. Still Repass down a position. Of course, Sepsky down 8 from where he started, so he would have started P9, but he's now out of the race, and that's why we have a few people moving up positions without anyone losing any positions. It is because of that Alfa Romeo retiring from the race. Moving on to lap 3 here, I'm hoping, since the group is so tightly bunched, that this will be the last lap under the safety car. We will be able to get going and start racing again on lap 4. So just keep our fingers crossed for that one, and hope that we don't get too much of a crazy start this time round. Obviously not a standing start, of course, so we don't have to deal with traction like we did last time. It would just be guessing when the lead is going to go, and everyone's sorting themselves out from there. Again, wet weather, you tend to struggle a bit more when it comes to overtaking. It's just one of the unfortunate things that happens. It's because the dirty air's it's really weird in the wet. The dirty air seems to be just as strong, but the slipstream pretty much disappears. You just don't get any, really, which is pretty strange as we get position changes. I think Jim's had an incident. Not sure what's gone on there. There's a safety car will be in this lap, but Jim losing a few positions there, and I'm not really sure why. But we'll focus back to the front, where Talpiz isn't really slowing down. He's not letting the safety car go as much as you would have thought. Maybe he's just giving it some time. He knows there's a fairly long way back to the pits. He is now giving that safety car a bit of space as we come into turn 12. So we'll just hold on, see when it is that he decides to go. Of course, he can't go before that safety car is in the pit lane, otherwise he'll get slowed back down by the game. But safety car now into the pit lane, and it's completely up to Talpiz when he decides to go. Most people like to go just before the final corner. I don't know why, don't ask me, but that's what they decide to do, and it looks like Talpiz has done exactly that. So hopefully not surprising too many people with his decision to go there. We actually have very close here between Bread and Polehouse, probably the closest gap on track right now. So it looks like Bread got a bit of a better getaway off the final corner than Polehouse did. Maybe Polehouse caught out a little bit by when the car aheads went. And you can see he's all over the back of that Ferrari now, so maybe shaping up a move down the back straight once we get there, of course. Couple of corners to go before we're there, and anything can happen in that time. But if he can keep this 4/3/10 gap that he has already, and he has kept it, so big chance on now for an overtake onto the podium here on lap 4. It's obviously, as I said, harder to overtake in the wet, and you can just see that with how much he was struggling to really close in on Polehouse there, despite being right in his slipstream. Of course, Polehouse just outside of Rudy's slipstream as it stands. We will turn on the telemetry, but you can see maybe using a bit more ERS there. Actually, they've used about the same, so you can see just how difficult it's going to be to make overtakes in this race when they're both using the same amount of VRS, but no one's getting any closer to each other, even though he sat right in what theoretically should be slipstream range. But it's just one of the weird ways that this game works, unfortunately. Maybe running slightly higher wings to compensate for the wet weather conditions than Polehouse ahead. Definitely an option. So coming now to complete lap 4, this is still really the tightest grouping on the track, except for Jim and Ladamala, but that's all the way down in P13 and 12. So this is way more interesting for P3 and 4, in all honesty. But you can just see, no matter how close they get to each other, it's just through those corners, the dirty air hurts them so much, especially with how slippery the conditions are. And then they don't really gain it back on the straight because of the lack of slipstream. And obviously they're travelling so slowly compared to if they are in the dry at full pace, that I think that really explains why there's such a lack of slipstream. But slipstream in this game doesn't exactly work realistically anyway, so it's whatever. You see the gap starting to open up now, so he is starting to lose touch a bit. Daniel Goodwin here very close to Dawidek for P10, and has Ladamala right on his tail still, so Ladamala able to hold on a bit better than Goodwin here as we come through the final part of the middle sector into the final sector. So this sector here is all about staying as close as you can. It's got high speed corners, it's got low speed corners, it's got medium speed corners, it's got it all really, and a lot of dirty air to go with it, so definitely one of the toughest parts of the tracks to follow through. Obviously the rest of the track has nice straights that you can get a bit of a slipstream on, but it looks like a small mistake there for Daniel. It's allowed Ladamala to get the jump on him. Ladamala try and round the outside of the penultimate corner. He's going to have the inside for the final hairpin. Is he going to send it? It looks like he is. He's got well ahead in the braking zone and he's made the move before they even get fully through the corner, so very nice move there from Ladamala. He's going to be straight again under pressure as Daniel, using that ERS, looking to the outside of turn 1. Of course we'll switch to the inside for turn 2, but Ladamala just breaks a little bit later, has a bit more confidence in these conditions and holds the position P11 ahead of Daniel. This is losing them a lot of time to Dawidek ahead. They've already lost over a second compared to what the gap was a lap ago, so fighting is going to cost these guys a lot in this race. And with how hard it is to overtake, there's going to be a lot of fighting. There's a big moment there for Daniel, just about getting it under control. That is going to put him under pressure here from Jim. Jim using that ERS, deciding to stop using it. Daniel's still using it as they come down the straight. Jim with a small advantage on ERS though, as they come into the triple chicane really. As another small mistake there from Daniel, runs a bit wide onto the curb. That could affect his exit, but Jim not really with the greatest exit either. He's going to pull out of the slipstream and it just loses to the Williams. So odd how the Williams just pulls away even though Jim had better momentum and was using the ERS, but that's just how it is in the wet. Pull it off the line and you start losing a bit of time. Maybe it's because the car's bottoming out over the water. I don't know what the game's reasoning for it is really, but it is very annoying when you're trying to have a good fight in the wet. But rain actually stopping here, so the track will start drying. It will just be a matter of time before everyone stops for dries. I think it could take as little as a couple of laps, but or as we saw in the one of the races last season, it could take a very long time to dry up. It just really depends from track to track, and I think France has a tendency to maybe go on for a little bit longer than you would think. We actually have up towards the front now, we have Harm closing in on the McLaren ahead. I say that, he makes a small mistake and it's actually losing about a tenth there from that mistake as we run onto the straight, so it will be even more time the further down the straight we get. You can just see the gaps here just inside a second all the way up this train, so yeah, it's going to be difficult for a lot of these guys to really make the progress that they want to, but we do have right behind a little battle between Dresser and Jonah as well, and then behind that Sculzi, Salt, Dawidek and Ladamala, as we have actually Jim here now trying up the inside of Daniel. Is he gonna? No, he's just gonna have to back out of that one. Doesn't want to go side by side through this corner where we saw Sepsky go off already. So Jim just being patient with this one, taking his time, as of course he knows that it's a dangerous pass to make with such low track grip, especially through that corner, which could be a bit dodgy in the dry sometimes if you take a slightly wrong line. So just being patient for now, as we have our first pit stop is Dresser. So he comes into the pits. Let's see what tyres are going on. I'm assuming it's going to be a set of dries, but maybe this is a little bit early. The track does look like it's drying quicker than I expected, as he's followed in by a couple of cars here, both racing points following him. He's gone on to a set of hards, which are going to be awful in these conditions, in all honesty. If I was him, I'd go for a two-stop. Either soft medium or medium medium. Softs would be super nice where the track's drying, because they operate at the lowest temperature. They heat up the easiest, I should say. So they adapt to these kind of changeable conditions way better, and you'll be seconds a lap faster on the set of softs. As DRS isn't able to. It does look like it was the right choice for Dresser here, but I just got some concerns over the tyre compound he's chosen. We'll look at the tyres that Bobby and Stel Repass had chosen. Bobby on the hards, Stel Repass on the mediums. Rally chosen the softs, which is what I personally would go with, in all honesty. So we're going to see now as the track obviously dry and everyone else will come into the pits, as this is going to hurt. Actually, it's going to hurt Bread a lot, as his teammate is ahead of him, so they're going to have to double stack, and he's got quite a few cars right behind him, so he would really have regretted not pitting the lap before, I would think, especially now since DRS is enabled. So that does mean the slick tyres are faster than the Inters, so we should expect to see everyone pit here, as that was a very late pit entry there from Tal Piz. I'm not sure what the rules are, as Bread goes on another lap then, so that's going to hurt him big time. Not sure, he probably should have just double stacked and taken the pain there, but has decided to continue on. So we actually have Stel Repass going for the move on Bobby here through that right-hander that we mentioned just a lap ago being kind of treacherous, but he has made the move work on those medium tyres. That's just what I'm saying. The softer the compound is, the way better you're going to be in these conditions, and everyone else choosing hards and mediums, and I'm thinking maybe Bread's only hope here would be to choose the softs and just take that pace advantage that he's going to have in these cold conditions, and use that to make back the time that he's losing from doing an extra lap. See where he is on the lap. He's coming down the back straight, his teammate coming through the double right-hander that leads onto it, as Sculzy gets passed by Rally here. Rally on that soft tyre is going to be mega quick compared to the guys around him. Just watch out, you see how much more grip he has, how much more confident he was into that corner there. Let's see if he can get on the traction early enough, and you can see already just how much better those soft tyres are. He's going to pull out, and that's going to be the easiest move of his life probably, up into P8. And choosing the soft tyres here is going to work out amazingly for him, I think, because I think for the rest of this race it will still be really cold, so a soft medium strategy I think will be better than a hard to the end, in all honesty. This is a roundabout where you'd pit for hards if you were doing a soft hard strategy, so you can see why a lot of people did choose the hards, but I think the softer tyres, which are going to perform a bit better in these conditions, will make up the time that you're going to lose through that extra stop. So I think it's definitely worth choosing a softer compounded tyre. We're just going to see as Bread actually chooses the hard, so Bread wants to go to the end on a hard tyre, and he's going to lose a lot of time from going an extra lap before stopping, and he's going to lose even more from choosing that harder compound. We're going to have to see where he feeds out. It's going to be a lot lower than 4th where he was before. It's going to be 5th, 6th, 7th, maybe even 8th, depending on if he can beat Rally to turn 1. Looks like he can, so 7th place for Bread, losing the 3 positions because of his choice to not double stack. He probably would have lost the exact same 3 positions if he did double stack, but it's just a shame really. Now we're going to see Rally. We'll just keep on board with Rally because he has some mega pace. You can just see how much he's closing up on the cars ahead, all of which are on hards except Tal Piz. Tal Piz absolutely rocketing away on those mediums. Really just showing that the differences between the compounds are amplified in these conditions. So Tal Piz, while he might be enjoying these medium tyres now, he's probably not enjoying them as much as Rally's enjoying these softs, I would say. As Sculzy gets past Dawidek into turn 8 there, and this little train of cars, Sculzy, Dawidek and Ladamala, looking like they're shaping up for a race-long fight in all honesty. Let's see, now is Ladamala going to go for the move into the right-hander. He does look to the outside, but he's just not quite got the momentum to get alongside the AlphaTauri as it stands, and no movement into the braking here, so he's going to stick behind for just a little bit longer. Maybe as the lag scares the life out of me for a second, I thought he'd just run straight into the back of him, but that is not the case. Maybe on the main straight is where we can expect to see a move, as Ladamala of course on those medium tyres. In fact, he's gone for it through the final corner once again. We've seen him make this move already once today. He's going to have DRS, going to be a drag race as they come up to the line. It's going to be Ladamala ahead. He moves himself into P10 then in this race on lap 11, so going well for him choosing these medium tyres. You can already see Rally here on the soft tyres already closing up to the back of the McLaren, so just really showing how much better those soft tyres are in these conditions, and going to use them the best he can. Tal Piz now with a 4-second lead out front, and you're just gonna have to wait and see what kind of gap he's able to pull before he pits again. For I'm assuming will either be a set of softs or a set of mediums, as we now get Jonah getting passed by Bread well before the corner, and Ladamala getting past Sculzy again just before the corner into the braking zone. So we actually had 3 moves there all in a row into the same corner, all looking like they got done before we ever got to the apex of the corner. But that does mean that Dresser now very low on ERS. He's derating already, as Harmer has 40% and Brett behind with 20%, all in better positions at the moment. Jonah in probably the best position out of the bunch, with the exception for Rally, whose tyre compound difference probably outweighs that ERS difference just a little bit at the moment. So yeah, you can expect to see Rally pit, I think, in a few laps time as those tyres start to die. Obviously we know at France that they're just not really the best tyre to be on, but he's definitely made up a lot of time from using them this way, as we get Jonah now right on the back of that McLaren, but Rally bearing down on him. I think it's going to be Jonah who has the biggest advantage in this train at the moment down the straight, as he will be able to just drain that battery a bit. But a small mistake there, going a bit wide onto the curb, maybe losing him a bit of time, putting him under pressure from the car behind Rally. So we're going to have to see how this one shapes up as we come down the straight, looking like Rally's not really going to be able to threaten Jonah, since Jonah does also have that DRS. But Jonah, that small mistake costing him a chance on Bread, so not able to make that position back that he lost a lap ago, and still under some pretty heavy pressure then from Rally, who's still making those tyres work over those who chose the hards. And you've got to say, maybe another move coming if he's brave enough. Looking to the inside, maybe look to the outside, look to the inside. Not going to go through either way, gonna have to stay behind for now. And if you remember, it was lap 7 I think that he pitted, so I wouldn't expect to see him stay out more than about 3-4 more laps than he already has. So those tyres are about to start dying off very quick as Tao pisses the fastest lap, and Bread gets run into the back of by Jonah. Rally though has found a opening on the inside that nearly closed off for him quite aggressively because of that touch and poor exit, and looks like he's going to send it into turn 1, going to be the outside for turn 2, but the grip he has is good enough and he's making it work. Now maybe a chance into turn 3 on the McLaren, not quite able to get the braking right, and doesn't get his chance just yet, but he will have another chance as we come onto the back straight. But he's got a lot of pressure from Jonah behind. He's looked like he made a small error through that section, as he actually starts looking like he's going to derate soon, as he's used so much ERS to make that place up on Jonah, and that could cost him pretty soon once his tyres start to die and he finds himself a bit defenceless against the Haas, who has quite a bit more ERS, so over double the amount. He will be a bit of a sitting duck in a lap or two's time, you've got to think. But Jonah with a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings, so that will be going off track 3 times, as we saw one of them earlier on in the lap. Obviously he ran wide at the exit of the right hander there, which is where he got the penalty. So twice in 1 lap, and that's already a penalty for the Haas driver. Now Tao Piz with another fastest lap of the race, as the track probably starting to grip up a bit and come towards him. Harm then with his own fastest lap of the race on those hards, and you can just start to see we're in that window where the hards are starting to come into play a bit. They're not so useless as they were before, and really closing up that delta between the tyre compounds, especially as obviously the softs and the mediums will wear out a bit quicker. Rally probably going to pit in the next couple of laps, I would say, but I'm pretty sure if he pits about lap 16, 17ish, he'll be able to take those medium tyres the rest of the way. In fact, I would say he'd probably pit lap 16 and then take the medium tyre 12 laps. I think would be the best play for Rally here, and that way he can get rid of those softs before they get too bad, and go on to a medium tyre compound, which is going to be pretty good for the rest of the race. Definitely better than all these guys on hards, which will help him out a bit. But you see, if he stops, he's probably going to come out last place from here. Looking at the gaps, the field has managed to stay very close ever since the pit stop window, and not really made the inroads that he needed to here, Rally. So we're going to have to see when he decides to pit where he comes out, because he could find himself trying to make his way through a lot of traffic, as of course Talpiz as well will have to stop again, and I think the chances are he's going to find himself well down the order, probably outside the top 10 when it happens, but he doesn't have to worry about that for a little bit longer. Yeah, I think he's probably got about 6 more laps left on those tyres, maybe 7 if he wants to, but depends what tyre he's planning on stopping onto. If he's planning on stopping onto another set of softs or another set of mediums at the end, will obviously affect the lap that he comes in. I would say since he's pitted lap 9, and so what that leaves 10, 18, 19 laps to go in a race if he pitted on lap 9. Well, did he come out the pits on lap 9? I think, yeah, he would have come out the pits on lap 9, pitted at the end of lap 8. So probably going to try 9 and a 10 lap stint on those tyres, so we might even see him in the next 3 laps. But someone who's on a bit of a charge of their own, Polehouse now passing Rudy there for P2. So this group looked like they were pretty static, to be honest. They looked like maybe they were just going to keep in each other's train. They were going to sit behind Rudy, conserve their own ERS and manage their own tyres while he had to use all of his and make a move towards the end of the race. But Polehouse has decided he's going to pounce now as Rally does come into the pits here on lap 16. I think that's a fair enough shout. He'll have to go 11, 12 laps to the end of the set of mediums, which will be pretty doable. Not too much to worry about there for him for the rest of this race, and just a matter of time seeing where it is that Talpiz decides to pit. He could pit about lap 18 and do 2 equal stints on those mediums, or he could go to about lap 20 and try and do a little final stint on softs. But it's completely up to him. As we have yellows in the exit of turn 2, it's looking like it's Daniel who's made a mistake, maybe had some contact. I can't see if he's got any damage from this angle. The helicopter shot not really helping out too much there. It doesn't look like he's got any major damage, so maybe just a spin. Obviously the barriers are quite far away from the track here, so you're only really going to get damage on another car. It's quite unlikely you're going to get that damage on a barrier. So looking like the huge amount of epilepsy inducing runoff here has saved him in this case. I get why people hate the runoff here. I don't mind tracks having tarmac or concrete runoff so much. I get that it's the safest option over grass, especially if it's wet. If it's wet and you're running off onto grass, which is slippery, it's not as safe as having a grippy runoff like tarmac. So I get why they do it. It's just annoying that it looks so bad here, as Brett getting a 3-second time penalty for track limits, then really hurting any chances that he had of moving up significantly in this race, unfortunately, because if he wants to make up any more positions, he'll have to overtake and then gain 3 seconds, which of course is very difficult to do with how this train forms at this track. As you can see, these 4 all in their own little DRS train, really no one able to break away from it, and if you're 3rd or 4th in that train, not really able to overtake. That all lies on the shoulders of the 2nd man in the train, or maybe the 1st man if he makes a mistake or something. So yeah, it's just one of them situations that you see all too often in F1 2020, that no one can really overtake unless someone makes a mistake like that. But that's Harm cutting the corner, getting himself a 3-second time penalty, and I that's going to hurt him as well, so that effectively puts Dresser ahead of him in the order, as Dresser doesn't have that penalty at the moment. Going to be interesting then. I could see Tal Piz pitting any time from this lap to about lap 2021, so keep an eye out for that as we continue on through this race. Brett is setting the fastest lap of the race though, so he did cut a corner to do it, or run off the track at turn 2 somewhere, I think, to do it, but he did set the fastest lap, so something's going on there obviously. But we have Salt into the pits to get rid of his hard tyres. That's not what I would have expected, but it's what's happened here, and we'll just have to see where it puts him in the overall running. Tal Piz then extending that gap to nearly 8 seconds at the moment, so I think if he was to pit now, he'd most likely come out about the bottom end of the top 10, which is definitely a position you can do something from. But I think a lot of these guys on the hards are really going to put up a bit of a fight, especially with how difficult it is to overtake at this track. If they just stay in their individual trains together, it'll just make it very hard for someone like Tal Piz to make that stop and come out and overtake them afterwards. So even though the hard tyre was the worst tyre to be on at the end of the rain period, I think the soft tyre definitely the best tyre to be on at that time. I think the general idea is here that running to the end will prevent anyone trying that 2-stop from making up too many positions, just because of the nature of this track. So it is really the 1-stop could work, a 2-stop could work. It just kind of depends on what everyone else does. Whatever the majority of people do is going to be right, and if you're in that minority, you're going to suffer a bit, unless you can really make use of those softer compound tyres while it counts in that early stage of the crossover period. But we'll have to see what happens with Tal Piz. I'm sure he won't be afraid of putting a move or two in towards the end of this race if he needs to, as we have Scully now moving past Ladamala for P8 again. So still this train of 3 cars of Scully, Ladamala and Dowdek all not really separating, as we see with that top group of cars, and they're just kind of following each other around, trading positions every now and then, and not really the most exciting racing really, as Dresser actually struggling for pace a bit, dropping off the back of this train could leave him susceptible to falling back into the clutches of Bread and Jonah if he's not careful. But he's just about hanging on to that DRS for now. Isn't that he's kind of at that gap, you know, that 7-8 tenths where he's not faster than the car ahead, but he's using the DRS to hang on a bit, and that's protecting him from cars coming up behind him. So yeah, that's the general look of this race for the minute, as Rudy actually clinging onto the back of Polehouse quite well. I think maybe they're a similar pace, and that's allowing them to stay close together to whenever the other one's in front. But a small mistake there from Harm. It cost him a little bit of time. It won't affect him too much overall. He'll just close back up with the use of DRS, but it has brought Dresser a bit more into play, which has kind of saved Dresser a bit, especially considering he's so low on ERS at the moment. But you can see here Harm really saving his own ERS, as well as Rudy, but Polehouse not able to do so because he's got to stay in front of the cars behind him. So they can all save their ERS by just cruising around behind with the DRS, whereas he has to use his, which puts him at more and more of a disadvantage as this race goes on, and Dresser apparently not quite getting the hang of it, as he's still derating all the time. But we actually have had Dowdek then making a move on Ladamala. Ladamala still fighting. He's going to go to the outside of turn 12, still very much alongside, but the inside line just proving to be too much for him to hold on compared to the hard tyre runner Dowdek, and those medium tyres really looking like they're falling off a bit in comparison, as he does pit here on lap 21. And I think There's a chance he could... Oh no, he just left the session. So I'm not very high hopes then. He was going on to softs. So that really, I think, is enough indicator that Talpiz can come in. Talpiz might choose to stay out, in fact. He might decide to risk the puncture and just hold that 7-second gap he has to the end, as we also had a couple of other guys in the pits. We have Stel Repas and Salt also into the pits for their final stops in this race. But you can see that gap is coming down between Polehouse and Talpiz very slowly. So maybe this will be a turning point in this race. We'll have to see if Talpiz decides to pit. He is coming through the final sector now, so it won't be long before we get any confirmation on whether he's going to pit or not. It is lap 21, which is around about where I predicted. It's the back end of that pit window that I predicted, so if he goes any longer than this, I think he's really wasting tyre life, as he does then pit, so he's not choosing to go to the end. He will pit, and it will be for a set of softs most likely. We'll just get some confirmation here as he comes into his pit box, and this will release the likes of Polehouse, Rudy, Harm, Dresser and Bread, who will all become the new top 5, and it is a set of softs going on to that McLaren. So we'll have to see where he comes out the pits. Looks like it is going to be behind the Haas and potentially the Ferrari. He's going to hope that that Ferrari and AlphaTauri don't hold him up too much. He comes out in P9, which back end of the top 10 prediction was around about right. I do know what I'm talking about sometimes. Obviously, if Ladamala was still there and hadn't pitted, he would be ahead of Talpiz too. But Talpiz now got to use those tyres. He's got a 5.7 gap to the cars ahead. He's then got to clear them, catch up to the train ahead of that, clear them if he wants to get the win of this race. So this strategy of going onto the hards and staying in this train has really worked out for this group of cars, who are now looking like they're getting a bit feisty as we come into the closing stage of this race. A couple of people looking at moves there as we came down to the back end of the back straight. Dresser and Bread, who are on the tail end of this train, suffering the most when it comes to the ERS though. So obviously Bread's had to use a bit to catch up to the train, and Dresser's kind of been struggling all race long, as he makes a small mistake there, but I don't think that's enough of a mistake to invite anyone in, as Jonah gets himself another penalty there. So not helping himself out very much at all in this race, as he is actually going to get overtaken by Scusi and Dawodek at the moment as it stands with that penalty. We're now going to see Dresser deploy the overtake to try and defend down the main straight. Probably didn't need to very much, but that McLaren does look very quick in a straight line, as it didn't lose, even though he wasn't using as much ERS as Dresser ahead, didn't lose that much time. So maybe a bit of a low downforce setup going for the McLaren, which might explain why it's getting so many warnings at the moment, as we do have a pretty good exit there from Polehouse. I think this has really changed the game, knowing that this whole battle here is for the lead. But you know, Talpiz has done one lap on those softs, and he's already caught up nearly 5 seconds to Dawodek and Scusi. So just showing the power of those soft tyres as they are fresh. But I'm not sure how much longer that will last for, as we complete another run down the back straight with no position changes in this group. But looks like Rudy went a little bit defensive there, maybe a bit scared of Harm behind. Harm, of course, as we know, was saving a lot of ERS, maybe choosing this as his time to strike. If he thinks he can get into second place now, he could challenge for the win in a couple of laps time, if he can hold on to it, of course. So definitely some tactical play going on in this group, and it's really going to be difficult to call who's going to win this race, in all honesty, because they're all in with a chance, of course. I mean, all of them could win, but it's just about being in the right place at the right time, as Harm then has a little look, but the space doesn't really open up for him, and I'm not really sure it was worth compromising your line into turn 1 there, especially with Dresser so close behind. But I don't think Dresser has really used that opportunity to its fullest, and hasn't really threatened harm as a result. So again, Rudy very close to the back of Polehouse, but I'm not sure Rudy wants to pass yet. I think he's fairly happy to stay in second place just at the moment. He's going to use his ERS right at the last moment, probably on the last lap, to take away the position without much chance of it getting defended, as Mr. Salt gets 5 seconds for speeding in the pit lane and will probably retire, would be my guess, as Dowidek and Scusi swap positions. So as this isn't really helping them with the charging Tower Piz right behind. Tower Piz then going to have a bit more ERS as it is, but he just has to stay behind for now as Dowidek and Scusi continue their fight, as Scusi goes very wide, and this compromises both of the drivers, as that allows Tower Piz to make the move on Scusi, who now he's forced his way up the inside of Dowidek. Did do the move off the track though, so I would expect that he will probably get a penalty for that. I think there's a high likelihood that he's going to get penalised for that move there. He did make he cut the corner to make the move. So I don't think the stewards will have a very lenient approach on that one, as Harm now gets himself 3 seconds. Not that that matters too much, as that Haas really is in the worst place as it comes out the pits. Obviously when you retire in the pits, the car comes back out of the pits and continues for a little bit, causing trouble for everyone else. But 2.5 laps to go in this race, so coming into the closing stages already, and we're just going to see now who is feeling brave and going to make a move, if anyone. I don't think it is going to be anyone. It's not looking like anyone can make the pass. You would have thought that maybe someone like Bread or Dresser could maybe try and make a move on the car ahead to better position themselves coming into the final lap, but it just looks like everyone's using that DRS and using that ERS, and no one can find a way through. But Harm now looking very close. He gets very close to this double right-hander, to the point where you think maybe he could go for a move, but it just never really plays off. He doesn't feel like being in the lead of this race, or even second at the moment by the looks of it. Probably just not wanting to risk it, knowing how many positions he'll lose from a spin or a bit of contact. So the final couple of laps here, as we move on to lap 26, Tal Piz can just tell his tyres are slightly getting away from him now, as he has done 3 laps on them. And it doesn't take long for those softs to start dying in normal conditions. They're way better in those changeable conditions than they are in fully dry conditions, in all honesty. But he is still making progress on Jonah ahead, but it's very unlikely that he's going to reach this front train before the end of the race. You can just see up ahead of Harm here how much more confidence Rudy has than Polehouse at the moment. He's been sat behind for so long, you've got to think that a move's got to be coming soon, but the gap just seeming a little bit too big every time they come into the straight. Can he make the move here? He pulls, no, he looks to the inside, he decides not to go for it. So it is going to have to be a last lap move if he wants to get anything done here, and nothing changes behind him either, so just not really much going on. I think maybe a better idea than everyone using their ERS down the straight would be to save your ERS down the straight and then use it coming out of the hairpin and try and get the move done into the right hander. I think that way you're more likely to catch someone off guard where they don't have the advantage of DRS that kind of nullifies this whole train. So maybe we'll see someone try that on the final lap. Maybe if they don't think they can get the move done on the straight, they'll wait a little bit longer and try and get it done into the right hander. But you can just see it's just 5-6 tenths everywhere, and there's not a whole lot that anyone can do about it, which is honestly one of the worst things about how slipstream and dirty air work in this game. Obviously in real life slipstream can affect a car up to 6 seconds back, but in the game it's 6 tenths that you get that slipstream from, and so the area that dirty air affects you in the game is bigger than the area that slipstream affects you, whereas in real life it's the other way around. And the only reason you can get so close in the game is because that effect of dirty air is so weak. as Rudy now making that move for the lead as we predicted. It is going to be fought back though by Polehouse. Polehouse is going to try and get the move done as it looks like Rudy went quite a way off the track there. So I'm not sure what will happen about that, as a Harm also moving up ahead of Polehouse and now maybe going to threaten Rudy with a last minute move in this race. Perhaps into the final corner he can go for a lunge if he stays close enough through this final sector. But Rudy now in the controlling position really for the last sector of this race. He comes through the penultimate corner, he's going to brake for the final corner, and minus any challenges from Harm, which do not come, he is going to come across the line and win this race, as I don't think anyone's going to be able to challenge him before we get there. So Rudy wins the race. Harm is going to lose some positions there because of his penalty. So it is Polehouse who comes second, Dresser third, Talpiz fourth ahead of Bread by nearly 2/10 there, as Harm sixth, Scoolsy seventh, Dowdek eighth, Jonah ninth, and Raleigh most likely going to come across the line for that final points position. I thought Dresser had a penalty. Maybe not. But I think there might be a penalty coming Talpiz's way, in all honesty. But CPI Dowdek getting driver of the day for making up the most positions. That's what the game bases it on. So yeah, there is your winner, Rudy. I think probably a good contender for driver of the day. It's not like he didn't make up a ton of positions or whatever, but played it very tactically, very smart to get the win at the end of the day, and of course didn't get the penalties that a couple of the other guys were suffering from. But just gonna look in the chat, see what's going on. Oh, a few people not happy. A lot of people not happy at Daniel Goodwin, in fact. Both Raleigh and Ladamala. And Bread not too happy with CP, URL Joe. Very professional stuff there. Yeah, Bread not too happy with URL Jonah. Apparently they had a few comings together on the outlap after coming out the pits, so that would have cost a lot of time to both of them, unfortunately. But hope you all enjoyed today's race. I think the rain at the start kind of robbed us of a more interesting race where strategy mattered a bit more. Obviously, we did have a few different strategies going into the dry period after the wet start, but I think it became very obvious that where the majority of people had chosen the hards, it would have been a lot harder for the two-stop to work, even though the two-stop technically being, I think, the faster strategy in that position, because you get the pace advantage, which is huge during that crossover period, and then once it fully dries up you are still on softer tyres to make up the time of that pit stop. But yeah, I think where the majority of people chose the hards, it created these groups that stopped the two-stoppers from progressing as fast as they would have liked. So overall, the one-stop worked out best, as Talpiz unfortunately found out. But yeah, I mean, still a decent race overall. I think a dry start would have given us a better race overall. You know, with the whole people on softs at the start having the disadvantage. but it's whatever. If you if you if you think about what could have been, it's not really going to get you anywhere. We had a wet start, and that's just the facts, and unfortunately it kind of ruined the race. But next week we have, if I can check the calendar, where is it? Oh no. We have Hungary next week, which is also known for not brilliant overtaking. But it is usually a good race, I think. Hungary again, where you get that split strategy, so you get different people on different tyres. Then I think if you also look at how easy it is to send a pretty huge move into turn one, we could probably get a fair bit more overtaking here than you would expect in real life, especially with how close this grid is. You can expect people running in a slipstream train, even with how bad the dirty is. Areas, you know, because Hungary's on this track, it's so confusing. There is horrible, horrible dirty air, but everyone still manages to find themselves in this little trains. It's so annoying. Just like you find at France, but it's a bit more understandable at France. But I think I've been going on long enough about how bad Hungary is. It's not really bad. It's a lot of fun to drive. It's a great track in this game. Just doesn't always produce the best racing, as history has proved. But we will move on to next week, and then see what happens then. So thank you all for coming. I'm just going to check the other streams, see if tier 2 or 3 is still going. I doubt it. Tier 2 is still live. Don't know if they're still racing. No, they just finished their race. And tier 4 is still live, but they've also finished their race. So nowhere to send you, unfortunately, this week. No exciting finishes to catch, but it is what it is. Thank you all for coming along. Hope you all have a good evening, and goodbye.